You know what's great? Going to a game. You know what's not great? Parking at a game. With Uber, you can turn event parking into a non-event. Just install the Uber app. Enter your destination, confirm your location, and within minutes, a car will pick you up. I know, right? With upfront fares, you can know the price before you go. And you pay with the Uber app so you can save your cash for the souvenir shop. So make tonight a fun night. Install the Uber app now and take your first ride today. Uber, the better way to get there.
There's some dangerous, large carnivore out there.
Yeah, I saw that bird pick a young deer off the road and fly away.
And it was just about getting dark, and we started panicking, running down this ridge, not really having any clue what was throwing rocks in our vicinity, good-sized rocks. And I stopped long enough to get a .357 out of my backpack and looked back, and that's when I saw it. I saw one.
For a week, the town of Defiance was being harassed by a werewolf, and it's actually attacked two railroad workers, killed livestock.
Good evening, Monstressers. This is Gunnar Monson. I am one of your hosts of Monstress Radio, and I am also the founder of the Sasquatch Coffee Company. Sasquatch Coffee. Have you tried it yet? Go to www.squatchcoffee.com to get yours today. With me, as always, is my good friend and Southern Californian temporarily, Mr. Shane Hardcore Corson. Shane, how are you?
Doing well, Gunnar. Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We here in Garibaldi, Oregon, we managed to elude the ice storm, Ice-Mageddon 2017 here in Oregon. We had a lot of crazy weather this weekend, so we mostly had rain here, though it did snow here in Garibaldi for about maybe 45 minutes yesterday, none of it sticking, but it was fun to watch. So I know that Susan was disappointed that we did not have snow on the ground, but we survived our big winter storm here. So I know that you are in Southern California, and how's that going? You were had an exciting weekend.
Well, it's been the weather-wise. You know, I'm in Southern California, so we're not dealing with the weather you guys are having up there. But I did manage to sneak out this weekend and go camping with Adam Davis, and enjoyed my time out in the Anzo Borrego Desert with him, and got caught up on some stuff and did a lot of hiking, and it was an absolute blast and perfect weather. Unlike what you guys are going through up there, but I will be back in the middle of all that here very soon.
Well, good. we'll welcome you back to the Pacific Northwest. I know that the Olympic Project has a outing coming up here in a couple of weeks, and I'm assuming you'll be back in time for that.
I will indeed. Yes, looking forward to it.
Cool beans. So also with us today is our good friend Julie Rench. Julie, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Doing good.
So, you were saying you were a little bit under the weather. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure my voice sounds just really great, but nonetheless, here I am.
Well, thank you for joining us. We wanted to get together to discuss what went on in the world of Bigfooting this past year. And I did want to mention that tonight is the premiere for the new season of Finding Bigfoot. They have a 2-hour show coming up tonight. So if you are a fan of the show, I'm sure you're excited. I know that, there's people in Bigfooting that feel both ways about it. But I will be watching. I want to see what Cliff and Bobo and Matt and Renee are up to. So I know that Cliff did a live chat a couple days ago, and it was fun. I watched him for a while. So if you are a fan of the show and would like to see it continue for, I don't know how many seasons they've done now, but quite a few. So,
yeah.
Well, aren't they supposed to have been in the Appalachian Mountains for the one tonight?
You know what? I'm a little behind on the. So I'm going to trust you on that one. I know that they're having. They all are bringing like family members. Cliff is bringing his brother. Matt's got his son, and Bobo is bringing a friend of his. So, and I know Renee had a relative that they were all. It was a family show. So, they always got to have a team.
We spent a week in the mountains up there this last summer.
Right,
in Appalachian. Yeah, good times.
Well, also with us today on the Bigfoot Roundup for 2016 is Mr. Steven Streufert, the owner of Bigfoot Books in Willow Creek, California. Let's go ahead and bring Steven.
Steven.
So, Steven, welcome to Monster X Radio.
Hello, thank you.
So, for those that are listening don't know who you are, can you give us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, I'm a person who lives in Willow Creek. I've been living in the Bigfoot capital of the world, so-called, since 2001, and in Humboldt County since 1993. So I found myself living in the middle of the Bigfoot stomping grounds long before I really had a deep interest in it. I was interested in this thing when I was 10 years old, when I read just about every paranormal and weird thing in the library. But for me here, it was a matter of getting done with school. I was going to Humboldt State University for grad school, and I graduated, and I found myself in the book business. And I was more interested in that than getting a PhD or whatever else in the academic world. So I stuck with that. And when I started looking around, I found that the Bigfoot was a big part of my local history. And I started looking twice at that statue along the highway and wondering, that's the thing that I saw in the books when I was a kid, I wonder what's that all about. I'd heard vaguely that the Bluff Creek was somewhere nearby in Humboldt or Del Norte County, but I didn't even know where it was. And as I moved here for the sunshine and the rivers and so forth, I found that it was right nearby. 29 miles north of my door here is Bluff Creek. And I started going up there and looking around, where is this film site? And I looked at the old books and found these sketchy maps. And I started meeting local people like Al Hodgson, who was one of the instrumental characters in bringing Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin down here in the first place. Friends with all the early Squatcher types, Bob Titmus and John Green and Renee DeHinden and so forth. So also they had conferences here, which I couldn't quite avoid, the 2003 International Bigfoot Symposium. I went to that with my friend who was on a journalist pass, and I was kind of half believing in it and half not believing in it. And after a weekend of that, I walked out of there really pretty much convinced that Bigfoot had to be real, despite all my sort of skepticism that I carry with me all the time. That's sort of how I got involved. By 2005, I opened up this bookstore, and I just happened to call it Bigfoot Books because everything here is Bigfoot. The podiatry office is called Bigfoot Podiatry. It's in the phone book. But so I've been doing that since 2005 here in this store. And once I opened the door here, it was just a constant influx of Bigfoot people, researchers and tourists and enthusiasts and so forth.
So it's kind of Bigfoot Books has kind of become an iconic landmark for Bigfooters and you're in Willow Creek, like you say, you're close to Bluff Creek. I had the pleasure to come down there a couple of years ago for Willow Creek Days, Bigfoot Days, and had a booth for Sasquatch Coffee, and I got to meet you, and of course you were giving me a hard time about SOA at the time, and I was, but you and Jamie took my friend Jess and J.M. Bailey down to the film site, and we had a good time, had some beers afterwards, and I never cracked and did not reveal the location of SOA, though I've been asked many times if I was involved in the disclosure of the SOA site. I can say,
Johnson likes to say that somebody ratted him out. But we did this investigation on our own, and, we tried to find every source we could, including you, because you'd been there. But, you didn't tell us anything. You pointed northward and said, over there somewhere. That's about it. Because, we could see from Bluff Creek, we could see the Siskiyous right there, so we had to kind of kid you about it, right?
Right. Yeah, I totally
Johnson has to understand that we found it by investigation. He challenged us to look, and he called us trolls and jerks and everything else. And meanwhile, he's proposing these things like portals, cloaking and portals and all these magical things. How could we resist looking into it? Especially because he kept talking about it. So we scoured everything on his published pages, his blog and everything, and his videos. We found the mountains, and we followed the clues, and we found the place. Mitchell Wilson found it on Google Earth by matching Johnson's own published photo of that site. So it wasn't anybody ratting him out. You really need to understand that.
Well, and that's and the thing was, he had kind of thrown down the gauntlet to try it. He was provoking people that to come and find the site, and was quite proud of using some misdirection in his posting.
Yeah, he misled us for about a year with all of his comments about Cave Junction and the Oregon Caves. But, it was fun, and we enjoyed looking around. It was such a beautiful area. I mean, there's nothing wrong for us in not finding it. Found a lot of other things, but we didn't see a Sasquatch or any sign of them up there. But, it was great to eventually find it and realize just how different it was in real life from what he claimed, this magical world that he claimed. It was just a clear-cut piece of Bureau land management land, and it's a road. It's on a logging road, and we could see and hear the city and the signs of human habitation right nearby, including a road that goes within earshot. You could hear the motorcycles and such riding by on it. So that was, I think, fruitful for us. It's within our research area too. You can see SOA's area from the hills of Bluff Creek. It's far away in Oregon, but as the bird flies, it's not that far. And so we considered it really as part of our area investigation, and we wanted to know what it's like up there, if anything else, you know.
Well, I mean, my experience up there was not, as I've shared many times, we had some interesting things with the food bowls, but as being I did not experience anything that would fit under the paranormal, or even I did not see any great evidence of Sasquatch. We did have some interesting things where he was putting food out, and but again, he and I have discussed the lack of processing of evidence that, you know, if you're going to drop people out as having vetted your area, that the evidence being collected during those times, there's a obligation to show what the results of the evidence were, to actually process it, not just say, I found fingerprints on a bowl and it was Bigfoot. I could not say that. We found fingerprints on food bowls and some interesting things, but I'm not.
Yeah, he has a lot of evidence that he claims, but then he says, well, we're not looking for evidence. We don't need proof. We want interaction. And so right there he goes and he removes it from all scrutiny or falsifiability or even verification. You know, he's got a 3-foot-long turd. He's got footprints and things that he claims. But, you know, when we went there, we didn't see any sign of anything. And, you know, I mean, there were footprints all over the place, but they were his shoes, his giant foot, and his lady friend, and some deer. And that was all we saw. And, you know, he was claiming beforehand, the 3 days before we went there, he was claiming heavy activity all around the perimeter, like he always does, right outside of camp, including Bigfoot coming into camp and doing back massages or whatever, healing activities, walking around. So where were all the Bigfoot prints? And this was in snow that had fallen before. So if there was heavy Bigfoot activity the night or two before, after it had snowed and all that snow was sticking on the ground, there should have been Bigfoot prints everywhere. And we didn't see a single one. And we looked, you know, about an hour and 15 minutes or so up there on the site before we had to go back. You know, we weren't going there for a peer review at that point. We were going there for an analysis of the area and to confirm that we had found the site. You know, we did that. But we also looked, and we didn't see a sign of anything unusual there, anything special about it, no food sources, nothing nearby that would indicate that it was a habitat of anything like a Bigfoot. You know, like maybe, you know, bears would come through there because it's an old logging road. A lot of animals will use these old logging roads as easy transit through the woods. It's also on the ridge, which is an easy area to walk for an animal. You know, so the place is crawling with other wildlife, I'm sure. You know, we didn't see much of it, but it was winter when we went there, you know. So there wasn't much going on. There were deer tracks. That's about it.
Let me ask you this. Is there a water source close by there?
Well, sure. There's a spring coming right out of the ground there in the road. Well, it's a seep. It's a persistent mud puddle. It just happens to be like right there where his claim of the portal is. Right there, you look down that tunnel of the trees covering the roadbed, you can see that there's this puddle right there. So it's a potential source for optical illusions and such. But as far as food source and water source, yes, there's a creek down below, and there's houses all along that creek, by the way. And, you know, the pot growers down the hill are definitely getting water somehow. But, I mean, I think they're on the municipal lines right down below. Food source-wise, there's pretty much just a few berries, a few straggler berries hanging off a bush. You know, but through habituation, you could train all kinds of animals to come around. You know, mice and rats, wood rats and ravens, which can carry off food, like, you know, what Johnson claimed, and you know, owls he's had many instances where he reported barred owls, and they're obviously barred owls. If anyone's ever seen or heard a barred owl, they can sound really, really wacky. But he claims that they're 900-pound owls, his joking way of saying that they're Bigfoot, imitating an owl. But, the owls will eat those other animals, and the raccoons and the bears, and he's even had bears come into his camp and tear the place up, but he then claims there's no bears. So I don't know.
Oh, really?
Johnson really loves to avoid scrutiny so that he can just say whatever he wants. Bigfoot comes into his bedroom at night in the form of an orb or a shadow cloaked, and hovers around his bed. Not long ago, they come 3 nights out of the week. What do they do? Sit around and watch television with him too? I don't know, but
right.
For me, it ends up coming down to extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and the wild, the more extravagant the claim you're going to make, you better be prepared to understand that people are not going to just accept it out of hand because you said, that it's evidence because I say it's evidence is no evidence at all.
Yeah. Well, evidence is not tested and falsifiable or verifiable is anecdote. It's him just saying what he experienced, and that's fine. If you want to form a religion, you could just take all the woo-woo Bigfooters and form a religion. That I'd be fine with that. Just don't call it science and don't pretend that it's scientific or rational or anything, We're on a subjective spiritual pursuit. Go for it. I don't care. Like Michael Merchant with his plant people and his forest shamanism and stuff. I don't mind that. I used to do stuff like that myself, when I was a teenager. But that was fun. Eating mushrooms and wandering around in the woods or whatever he does. But I did that. So what? I learned some things from it, and I think the most important thing about all these subjective experiences that people can have is that, the world's a mysterious place, but you have to bring it back to earth somehow, right? And the way that we bring things back to earth and make them make sense to each other is by having them be communicable, verifiable, subject to logic and rational analysis. And that's what I advocate. I'm not even opposed to people having woo-woo lifestyles. I just think that, if you're going to make big claims, you should expect that someone's going to be taking account of that and trying to analyze it to see if it's true, or laughing at you if it's ridiculous. If it's ridiculous and there's nothing to establish it as potentially real, then we have no obligation to accept it. And I actually think beyond that it's dangerous because people begin to live delusional lifestyles, and they're not living in the real world. And, it can be physically dangerous in the sense that they might habituate a bear that eats them. But also it can be, psychologically dangerous. If you're detaching yourself from reality, you're slowly falling into a solipsism that isolates you from other people and makes it impossible for other people to communicate sensibly with you. Such that we can share an experience and say, hey, let's go to the moon. How do we do that? Okay, we'll design this rocket ship to go out of the atmosphere and out of the gravity of the Earth, and we'll do some Newtonian physics and find out how it gets there. And we can do that, But, you can't make Sasquatch exist by adding up a bunch of blurry pictures and mistaken bird sounds and other things. It's just not going to happen that way. We need a rational pursuit. If you're curious about Bigfoot, right, if you want to find out if it's real or not, or if you want to verify or validate your own experience of thinking you saw one, then you're going to have a rational means of doing so, right? That's what I always try to advocate. In my blog or what we do or on the coalition group.
Right. Well, you mentioned
now
your
what
blog. What is your blog website, Stephen? For those who are interested.
Hopefully it's linked on the show page, but it's called
It
blog. I hope so.
Okay.
But you can find me pretty easily if you want to, just by doing a Google search for Bigfoot books, Willow Creek. And hey, if you want to buy some books from me, you can find the information there on my blog too. But mainly you'll find my Bigfoot stuff because that vastly outnumbers any links to my big book selling pages. I do run a bookstore here. It's mostly just ordinary books, but I do have about 150 Bigfoot titles in stock usually. And, the other thing is you could look up Bluff Creek Project, which is what we've been doing since 2009, as a formal study, of the history of the Bluff Creek, Willow Creek area in regard to Bigfoot. And our camera project, which is still ongoing right now as we speak, snowed in up there in Bluff Creek where no people go for 8 months or so out of the year, right? We're watching for Bigfoot right now on the film site, right there on the Patterson-Gimlin site.
I'd like to get into that. Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, I was fascinated, and I have appreciation for people who preserve the history in these iconic sites. Mark Marcel, put an inordinate amount of time into locating the the site of the Ape Canyon incident, the Fred Beck incident. And you guys...
Yeah, that's a great job that he did on that, and we really appreciate that. That'd be a similarity to what we did with the film site.
Right.
He did great work.
Actually,
maybe it's not verified yet, finally, but... Right.
Well, I've been there, and I can't imagine there's another site there that would be the place that fits the description of the story. But you basically, the Patterson-Gimlin film site had been lost, and the Bluff Creek Project started out as a effort to relocate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Around the year 2000, I think it was, or 2001, early on, I went up there for the first time with John Green's book and tried to find the film site and got hopelessly lost in the creek and up on the logging roads looking for it. But by 2003, we realized that no one knew. Apparently, all the famous people had come here for that symposium, and no one could find it. Years later, we found out that Bob Gimlin, who was there, had said secretly, as an aside to Bobo, that he thought he had found the spot where they first saw the creature, but nobody seemed to hear Bob say that. And Bobo was only willing to tell us that after a couple of years of us looking into it. He finally admitted that Bob had identified at least where he thought the right part of the canyon was, because after so many decades, all those trees had grown and covered everything. But Bob saw this canyon just upstream from the film site, and he said, that looks familiar. So, they went back downstream, and there's a persistent crook in the creek where it bends real sharply right after the film site. And that's where Bob said to Bobo that he thought it might be the place. But then we had to do these years of investigation even to find that out, that Bob had said something. We had to rule out, 7 or so different other locations identified by people like M.K. Davis and Peter Byrne and so forth. And I talked with everybody, Jim McLaren and John Green, anyone who had been there, including local people like Al Hodgson and Jay Rowland and my neighbors and so forth. That nobody, including the U.S. Forest Service, could even tell us accurately where it was. Nobody, even Bob or the Finding Bigfoot crew, who we were working with in some regard, in 2011, could find the big trees and the stumps or anything. But that's what we sought out to do, is to find those stumps and those trees we had to unbury some of this stuff. Like, it had been covered by vines and forest debris, and the site was so overgrown you had to pry your way through it. It was so thick in places with old scratchy branches and brush and everything. But once we did that, we eventually found that big tree. It took a while, and when we found the big tree prospect, we found all those other ones that you can see in the background of the film sitting right next to it. So it was just like an epiphany. Suddenly it emerged out of the woods. Like, my God, there it is. Like, we'd walked right past these trees many times.
Wow.
Moneymaker and all these other people had walked right through there and not even realized they were walking on a trackway of Patty. But now we can verify this, like, down to like a few inches. We had Bill Munns up there and everybody else that we could find who was involved in this. And we know what the trackway. We can say where Patterson was. Bill Munns is able to calculate this down very precisely by using frame-by-frame analysis of the film. So even though a lot has changed in almost 50 years, it's significantly preserved by, the sandbar. It just didn't wash away. It didn't rot away. It was covered by trees and kept in a little time capsule all that time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, it was interesting.
That's what we've been doing.
I mean, it was interesting to visit the site with you and Jamie because you were the ones that worked to, and others in the Bluff Creek Project to relocate the site, and you didn't just guess. There was a process that you guys used to identify landmarks that were still there, umpteen years later, and it's amazing. It was the same thing at the going to Ape Canyon. Is like you think you see the picture and you see the film of the Patterson-Gimlin film, and it looks nothing like that. 40, 50 years later, the forest is always growing, and then you add in the water element that the way the water rivers flow and stuff changes constantly, and I was just glad that you guys had taken on that project and allowed, and honestly, it's not that hard to get there when you know where it is. But
it's getting harder and harder every year.
Right.
They closed the road going in there. Hiking up the creek is harder too as it grows thicker and thicker in there. It's really coming back to life. There was logging and human impact there for years, and fires burning through the area and everything. But ever since the last couple of decades, the logging industry has really kind of died off, and it's really too rugged and remote to log through there anyway. It's too environmentally sensitive, and it's too culturally sensitive to the native people. So Bluff Creek is it was not only a time capsule for the film site, which was somehow not washed away because of the geology and the topography of the area. It just flowed right around it. But, it's being preserved as a sort of natural restoration zone where everything is prospering. I mean, all the species that are native to that area are just fecund. And mountain lions, we've got bears, we've got all these things, including the controversial marten, the Humboldt marten, which was thought to be extinct at one time, which is a distinct subspecies from the other ones closer by, like the Sierra marten or the ones up in Oregon and along the coast of Washington and so forth. This is a known distinct subspecies, and we've got them on camera many times. That just the rediscovery of the Humboldt marten was made nearby in Bluff Creek in '96 or so. Someone got a photograph of them, and so they were known to be alive and recognized already as the Humboldt marten. And since then, our project is the most significant trail camera or wildlife survey being done in that area, aside from the ones that are on the coast in the redwood zone. So the Forest Service and other biologist people are working on those coastal ones, but the populations are fairly distinct even among those. So what we have is a really local subgroup that's living in Bluff Creek. I think it's really cool. And we've had the people like the Center for the Biological Diversity and other environmentalists and the wildlife groups recognize that is significant. The Forest Service likes what we're doing, which is cool because, they generally don't like Bigfooters going up there and causing havoc and disasters, driving off cliffs and burning up recreational vehicles on these deteriorating forest roads. So they're kind of happy to see us doing that. It does some of the work for them. Like we were able to show them where the film site even was, so now they know what they have in their jurisdiction. Yeah.
What did they think of that? I mean, are they open to the possibility that Patterson and Gimlin filmed a Bigfoot in their jurisdiction?
Well, they're happy to know that it's at least a cultural site, famous for whatever it is, either a hoax or a cultural icon or a real animal, potentially. But, they were skeptical. It's kind of their job to be that way. There was no sign of, government cover-up. They were genuinely curious. They had several varieties of Forest Service worker there, including their wildlife biologist and Native American guy coming along. He's obviously going to be somewhat inclined to at least respect the idea of Bigfoot because it's so central and they're persistent and, important, really, in their culture. So, obviously not all of them believe in Bigfoot, but they didn't laugh at us either. Who are you idiots looking for this myth? They seem genuinely curious. Could it be possible? But they're happy in any case that we found something real. Right? We were able to show them precise landmarks that matched what they had with all of their printouts of aerial photography and stuff. So it's a piece of real knowledge, regardless of what it means. We would like to see that Bigfoot is proven real, but obviously that can't be our only goal or our biasing goal. It's an hypothesis that we test with these trail cameras now. We're trying to find, what really is there. And so far, after 5 full years of doing this, that we haven't had a single Bigfoot walk anywhere near any of our cameras, up to 20 of them, all triangulated in some places around the best transit routes and water and food sources that any sensible animal trying to conserve its energy would take. We got a lot of blob squatches, but we could go out and put these on the internet like a lot of people do.
Right.
And, just not show what we also have, which is the before and after photos of the bear, or the deer or whatever.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that I appreciate about the approach is that you're interested in the subject, but it is an approach of evidence weighted by evidence. I mean, that's you're in the way to prove the existence or lack of existence is in evidence. I mean, you're trying to I've always said that it's the onus of the proof is on Bigfooters, and we do ourselves a disservice by relying strictly on anecdotal evidence as proof of a unknown species. That's going to convince science that say I saw Bigfoot is not. We have a lot of stories like that we have lots of footprint evidence. We have lots of we have very few pictures, fuzzy pictures, and probably the best photographic evidence that at least that is publicly known is the Patterson-Gimlin film. And 50 years later, this year, it did not prove the existence of Bigfoot to the general public, and it's still being debated as whether or not it's a real creature or not.
It's just ambiguous and anomalous enough to be like perpetually intriguing, and it's more than any other thing drawing in a very large number of people to be curious about Bigfoot, which, if anything, is an achievement of Patterson and Gimlin, even if they did hoax it, because despite this film, there's a tradition of sighting reports and anecdotal claims and cultural history that is at least enough for us to say this is worthy of study, of open-minded inquiry, But obviously you have to be skeptical, especially, try to get maybe to the topic of the show that you were proposing, like the year in Bigfoot in 2016. What the heck was that? Just a whole lot of nothing. I mean,
right.
I'm sitting here like, what's the best thing that we have? And it's probably like Peter Kane's. You hear that?
The Sasquatch foot doesn't look like it was in the freezer. Oh, really?
That's what we have. We have, like, jokers, hoaxers, media exploitation, a lot of people who've just gone off the deep end in their spiritual pursuits or whatever you call it. A lot of people are just really deluded, I think, with their claims, that they're going to draw 1,000 yellow circles on any patch of forest anywhere.
Yeah. I don't get that.
Like, if you look at the top of Coalition Group right now, you'll see this picture that we got. Someone sent to us. Welcome. This came from YouTube, actually. Welcome to my world. And everything is circled in yellow or whatever. Like,
right.
I don't
know. You can find shadows and shapes and whatever that look like possible fuzzy. Yeah. in almost any picture.
If there were 100 Bigfoot or 200 Bigfoot in this one picture, you think one of them would have, and some of them are like 3 inches tall. I mean, you think one of them would have been captured in a goldfish bowl or a jar like a firefly. I mean, these people are saying, like, they're going so far as saying, like, that Bigfoot is an elemental being, like one of the fairy folk. That nature is made of these things. So if you see a shape in a trunk of a tree, well, that's the Bigfoot spirit in there.
Oh, man.
It is going really too far. Yeah.
And those kind of, that's like you say, that's fine for people to follow that path, and that's how but it isn't the general Bigfooting. People that have a scientific approach to it and feel that, and perhaps have the interest, and not everybody that's in quote-unquote Bigfooting is trying to prove their existence. Some people are just going out, to have a spiritual experience. Some people are going out to see if they can hear Bigfoot or have a sighting, and it's about their own personal Bigfoot journey. But some of us are interested in more lean towards trying to collect evidence of a conclusive nature that can be, they say, verifiable, repeatable to to the general public. That to bring in it, and part of that is for conservation. The idea that, though I argue people, we need to kill a Bigfoot to prove they exist to protect their habitat. We have sufficient animals, species that are known right now that live in those environments that require, that environment to survive, that we should be already preserving the environment for, but we don't. We need another.
We don't know where Bigfoot even lives. Like, it's supposed to live so many places that how could it even be considered endangered? It's living outside of golf courses and 7-Elevens. You know, it's behind, Home Depot, where
some people's bedrooms. Yeah, it's in some people's
bedrooms. And
we might even be harming them by trying to practice environmental pursuits. Who knows? Since there's no data, we need data. And like a lot of people assume, well, he doesn't believe in Bigfoot, or they say that like it's some kind of a criticism. But I don't believe in believing in anything. I don't believe in belief, justifiable belief. If it's based upon evidence and reasonable things, then I will believe it when I can see that there's indication it's real. So even though my belief or whatever personal feelings about Bigfoot have greatly declined since the 2003, I still hold out the agnostic position that it might be real. And, we then go out and test the hypothesis. Is Bigfoot real? Well, let's find out. Let's look. We live here. We like going there, so let's put up some trail cameras. And, well, you could criticize trail cameras. Okay, well, look around, too. And we've done all this stuff. And, we have a rational approach. Like, if we ever do get evidence, we're going to be very excited, and we're going to try to present it to the world in a way that will be objective, and not make any extraordinary claims. And if it's real, we can give verification of that. We'll get more scientists come in and look into it. But, scientists in the world out there, the wildlife management, the Forest Service, anybody, they're not going to buy into these 1,000 yellow circle pictures. And they're not going to help out protecting Bigfoot or proving Bigfoot's real by claims like they turn invisible, live in another dimension, that they're actually plant people, that they come from spaceships, or any of that. Cloaking, portals, guardians, 3-foot-tall guardians and little pixies running around. Like, don't walk, so you might step on one. This isn't helping. And,
it's really
if you want
off the deep end.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is what you
amusing too, though, for me and for our group.
Yeah, and you make a very strong point is, and I am the same feeling, is that belief has nothing to do with it. Bigfoot either exists or Bigfoot doesn't exist, and it isn't a matter of believing in Bigfoot. You don't believe in leprechauns or believe in. I mean, it's not about belief. It's a simple. Deer don't exist
and it
because
doesn't
I believe
matter
in
if you believe or not.
Deer.
It shouldn't matter. We shouldn't have these big fights about it. Like, I could go hang out with Derek Randall, who says he's seen one, or Bobo, or Cliff.
Or
we
Shane.
all have varying degrees. Shane, we all have varying degrees of belief or non-belief. But what unifies us is curiosity and rational thought. So I can sit there with Bobo. I know he's seen Bigfoot many times, and he's a hardcore believer. He's threatened to kill me, jokingly, a number of times for being too skeptical. But, I mean, we remain friends, and it's cool. And, the sad thing is when you get, like on Facebook, especially now, these people that are just in your face, trolling you or attacking, threatening violence, death threats, slander and libel. And
you had an experience where that wasn't moved from Facebook. Wasn't your bookstore shot up at one point?
Yeah, it was. Like,
so I mean,
by. You could look. Yeah. You could look through the bullet or the big hole in the window, and it lined up perfectly with the level of a truck, like a SUV or pickup, driving by, and someone holding a gun out the window, firing. And it was a hollow point, large caliber slug.
That's nice.
I was able to pick it up. It bounced off, the books and filing cabinet there, and I found it on the ground with all the glass shattered. But I don't know if it was done by Bigfooters. A lot of people kind of ran with that. I just said, wow, someone shot my building. Next thing you know, but it did combine with, like, a lot of these people who have threatened to do that. I'm going to come to Willow Creek with baseball bats and beat you up in the field. Ed Waterman said he's going to do that. I had another dude from Washington. I won't say the name, but he threatened to get his friends who live in the Hoopa reservation to come here and beat me up because I commented on one of his posts on Facebook. He had published like 100 photos of him walking around, and each one of them had like circles of a blob squatch that he was supposedly following. I said, how could you have like this many photos and not a single one that shows a clear animal? You know? Right. And he got so mad that he wanted to kill me. And he said, I come down there all the time. I'm going to come to your store. And it happens to me regularly. And it's creepy because I don't know how many of these people are really seriously mentally ill or psychotic, deranged, sociopathic, whatever they are. They might think I really am literally the devil, as some new agey Bigfooters have said. You know, he's like the devil, or the coalition is evil. You know, or like Merchant, the coalition of evil doing and delusion. You know, it's like, get out of here. Like, you know, we're just skeptics doing our own thing. We're critical thinkers looking into the thing, and we generally know more about Bigfoot and been involved in it more lengthily than these people have. You know, where did Michael Merchant come from? Where did Kelly Shaw come from? You know, who are these people? I've been doing this, living in this area since like 1999, which is the longest time anyone has. But you know,
if you're going to present Bigfoot evidence, one, if I found something, I want it to be critically looked at. I mean,
exactly.
The people that make the biggest noise about when you call them, is because you question them critically about what they're presenting as factual evidence, and that's part of the process of proving unknown species. I mean, we have a huge burden of proof, you know, and running and having pictures that we're putting, you know, 100 circles in and saying these are all Bigfoot is in this picture. There's 100 Bigfoots in this picture. I mean, that stuff should get thrown out. It would be thrown out as evidence in any critical scientific kind of study.
Yeah. Can you imagine someone, a marine biologist, bringing a bunch of blurry pictures of so-called newfound specimens of these fish, but my God, you can't see it, but it's there. You just got to believe me. I mean, why is it just the Bigfoot world that they find this acceptable?
It isn't. I mean, I've talked to friends that are in other.
Well, the alien thing too. But I mean,
aliens
this weird paranormal stuff.
Right. It's people that don't. I mean, that's to me that's a big red flag. If you don't want your evidence looked at critically by other people,
or you say like,
right.
Or if you say that you're not out to prove Bigfoot, I don't want Bigfoot to be proven. You know, if it's proven, they'll come and slaughter them all. I want to keep them private in my backyard. You know, like really, like even then, you know, if it's living in your backyard, I'm sure you could get better evidence than a blurry picture of a tree stump, like Matthew Johnson was going to so often that he knew every stump and snag and dark shadow up there. It's only a small area up on that ridge where he goes and camps and researches, and he should have known better than to post pictures he took over his shoulder of a stump, a snag, you know, because like he's even an advocate of going back and taking second pictures. Well, you know, when we went there, we found those very same stumps and snags that he took pictures of and claimed were Bigfoot.
Wow.
So, like, if you don't believe in evidence, don't put your pictures up. Don't make any claims. Or just say, this is my personal experience of Bigfoot, and I live with Bigfoot in my own mind, or, whatever it is. Like, it's okay, it's all right. But once you put it out there and claim it's evidence, like some of these people like Barb Shoup and Samantha Ritchie do, well, I don't know. You show me a picture of a demon entity from outer space, I'm going to kind of chuckle to myself, for one. But, like, also I'm going to say, how can you prove that? Like, trying to tell me that these things are real. So it's part of the public Bigfoot culture. And therefore, it comes through my newsfeed along with everything else. What's that? Julie?
Well, the public, the social media Bigfoot world is slam dunk full of these people who, it's almost like they want their own little cults and stuff. It's really bizarro. It's like they want people to worship them because they're the Bigfoot god or something. I don't have time for that. And I'm seriously shocked that people do fall for that stuff. It's mind-boggling.
Well, it's grown.
Well,
it's grown too.
Yeah,
it's growing.
And what I think Bigfoot will
media.
Definitely not be proven on Facebook. I mean, that's we're not going to get a Bigfoot body on Facebook.
But what it does is it almost has the opposite effect. It tends to disprove Bigfoot. But the more this stuff happens, the more laughable it becomes. The more of a joke it is to the outside world, especially. But like even to meet people like me, I was basically like what I used to say, a 95% believer. In 2003, I was just high on the hog, or whatever you say. Bigfoot felt real. Like I'd go out in the woods around my house, and I was always feeling like Bigfoot could be there. But after a decade or so or more of experiences with the so-called researcher community, I'm more and more and more called upon to be critical, skeptical, to say, no way, that is not real. And it's driven me to the point where I can hardly believe anybody or anything. I have a very small list of people that I consider rational researchers. And, that'd be like the Olympic Project, you guys, people out in Ohio who are trying to have the real, not just boots on the ground, but a brain in your skull, so that you can actually learn and experience the outdoors and learn from it rather than have freaky, bizarre, paranormal experiences.
Right. Well, I think that this service that all of this going out in the woods and taking 20 steps in and taking your camera and snapping pictures, as you turn in circles, going home, looking at them and finding Bigfoot, it's a complete disservice to what you're claiming you're wanting to do. You want to, claim that you're trying to prove that Bigfoot's real. Well, what we do is if there's an area we go into and we know there's been activity, like the one we did this summer, if you have a 250-foot long barbed wire fence, then you go and you look at every single barbed wire on that fence all the way down, all 250 feet. That's what we did, and we found that one clump of hair. We sent it in, and lo and behold, it was bobcat. And since 1850, we have not been able to prove bobcat in this county in Ohio.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Like, while
you're
investigating,
why go out there and waste your time if you're just random taking pictures and, I get home and I'm going to see Bigfoot in this picture. You're wasting your time. Why not do something more on a scientific basis where you can maybe find a species that, is coming back into your area that's been extinct or partially extinct? Important things. Why waste your time? Is it just because they want the attention on Facebook? I don't get it.
Or the clicks and the money, or the TV show.
And the thing is that the real Bigfoot research is kind of boring. I mean, it isn't. Yeah, I mean, it's not that exciting that you don't go out and have something happen every time that you're in the woods. And just like, I bet, Julie, when you found that clump of hair, you were hopeful, and it's like, wow, this is in an area that has reports of some activity, and like, here's some hair, but your approach was the proper approach, as opposed to some people who would have taken that clump of hair and posted it on Facebook and said, had a Bigfoot story, look, I found Bigfoot hair. But that's shortcutting the processes, and it's lazy. I mean, it isn't. It's not really, and those people that are doing that are not they're not looking to use a scientific process to prove an unknown species or an unproven species.
Right.
They're, it's like you say, it's going on Facebook. I would never post anything on Facebook that was serious evidence. I mean, that is not, I think,
exactly.
I don't think that's the proper place in the process.
No.
To proving something scientifically is posting pictures or evidence on Facebook. But that's what happens every day.
And those mindless videos that they take of themselves out there roaming around, blabbering about all this. I mean, who does that? Who has time?
I think there's a lot of people who
too many people
don't have a lot of other things going on in their lives. They will seek this special feeling and this special community, and they get this big, kumbaya thing going on, and it generates a lot of the tendency towards confirmation bias, especially when you're getting social approval for it, and you get membership in a special group. Like so many of these people who threaten to kill me or whatever the hell, call us evil because we're critical thinkers.
Right.
They're people who just came out of nowhere like a year ago, and they're already like so fanatical that they want to kill people. But think about the old days. People that I respect who've been in it for a long time or are now gone, like, Renee DeHinden.
John Green.
He never saw one. John Green never saw one. Peter Byrne never saw one. These guys really did look hard and sincerely and seriously, and they tried everything, all these special claims that people make today about habituation. It's all been done before. The only thing that's changed is the medium, which conveys like instant gratification on Facebook and instant community. Whereas back in the old days, there might be 4 or 5 Bigfoot sightings in a year, and John Green or Renee DeHinden would get on a plane from Canada and drive or fly or whatever they did to go look just at footprints. When in 1967 they found these tracks up on Onion Mountain above Bluff Creek, John Green got in a car and drove all the way down here from BC, Canada.
British,
and then he got in his car, went back home. The next day, Bud Ryerson calls him on the satellite phone and says, "We got what you're looking for here," And John Green says, "The hell with it." Gets some money from some funders and gets on an airplane, flies all the way back down here to look at more footprints.
All right.
This was a big case of the year, or one of the biggest cases of all time. But nowadays it's like I find millions of tracks everywhere. Like, according to these people. Every day on Facebook, if you actually just look around in a few groups or on your newsfeed, you're going to see multiple sightings. Bigfoot talking in the brain, Bigfoot in my bedroom, and everything.
It's natural inquirer stuff.
Right.
I mean, that's what it is. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that Bigfoot had my baby. I mean, that's.
And it's exactly where we have come after all this time. We now live in a world that's post-truth, post-fact. Everything is, whatever it's on the internet, it's on TV. It's Ancient Aliens all the way down. whatever happened to rational people like John Green sitting around saying, well, you can't solve a mystery by proposing another mystery? People actually trying, amateurs perhaps, some of them, to practice scientific pursuits, or at least to be rational in the way they thought about it and acquired reports and took down as much information as they could and dug into the history of it, pulled out these old accounts like Ostman and Beck and the native people and their culture. And you had serious academic conferences like the one in D.C., Canada in 1978, where a whole bunch of academics came out and actually, those largely skeptical, they actually considered the possibility of these things. Now it's like, it's Tim Peeler saying, get out of here, chasing him off the stick from my moonshine spill. It's like whatever funny thing you can find. That was a good one. Like Rick Dyer knows this. He's a smart enough guy to know how to exploit this. Peter Kane, he's a total joker. Posts a bunch of funny Bigfoot videos, like Bigfoot's outside in my yard playing with himself, or whatever it is. And there are actually people believing this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
I've
seen that. Oh, that's fun. That one with the foot recently that he did. I've seen people discussing it, and I'm just like, face palms, Please
look at his other videos that he's done.
Right.
Well, there was, so talking about 2016, and unfortunately we did lose John Green this year. That is a big passing of someone who contributed a lot of serious research into the subject, and that is so. And I know Shane talks about this all the time. Is that there's an obligation for some people, some of us in Bigfooting, to part of what drives us to take this seriously and present things and be critical of the evidence is to honor those that kind of went before us. John Green is one. Dr. Bindernagel is another person who comes to mind. Renee DeHidden is another that spent a large portion of their lives looking into this mystery, and I think it does a huge disservice to those people to make it a joke, to not be critical of the evidence, to present things as fact, without critically putting them through a ringer of a scientific process. I mean, if you say I'm a Bigfoot researcher and my end goal is to prove this myth is actually a real living, breathing creature, your responsibility is to actually is to learn how to go about that where it actually proves, at the end result proves that they exist, or proves that they don't exist, because you actually eliminated all other possibilities. And we have some people that actually do take that approach, and we have some hyper skeptics that I think actually are important to Bigfoot research. And I think what I hear you saying, Stephen, is that you are still open to the possibility of Bigfoot existing.
I don't claim that it does exist,
right?
But I don't claim that it doesn't exist. Like, if you catch me in a grumpy mood these days, I'm gonna say something like, "It's very unlikely that it does." But you see what I'm doing? I'm not ruling it out. I think there's a lot of evidence in the form of anecdotes, mostly, that there's something going on. So I'm willing to look into it. Maybe it's a bizarre phenomenon of the human mind, and this is some archetype of the psychology that we have, that's appearing. Since it seems to be an archetype that goes back in culture, in many cultures, to the earliest times, whether you consider the Gilgamesh story to be about Bigfoot or not. The Woodwoes and all these Native American variants. But, they're not all the same thing. And we don't know what motivates people to see shapes and forms and to interpret them the way they do. Because human psychology is very complicated. We have a hard time remembering what happened if we were witness to a car accident, as a classic example. If you witness something on the street, the people will say 5 different versions of what happened. And over time, their memories change. And they're subject to influences, so information might change or get added. But, there seems to be a natural inclination that's hardwired into us to see faces like our own. Or maybe it's connected to, being able to discern if a predator was going to attack us in the brush back in Africa, And the people who were able to see those faces survived better because they were more on guard. But in terms of rational perception of reality, we need to take a step back from these hardwired psychological things and consider, maybe, I have to think twice about that. And so that's why we have science and logic and reason and these things that we've developed, fields of study, which can critique what's happening, And that's what we promote in our group. We're being skeptical and critical thinkers, just like John Green was. But nowadays, there's a whole mystical thing that's evolved. People who believe things without reference to evidence at all, on all sides, like in the political election we just had, all sides of it had this propaganda going on, right? I mean, it's so hard to tell what's even real, But that is all across the board a problem. And I don't quite remember what your question or where we were, but I'm rambling on now, like I tend to do. But
no, it's
just get me back to the topic here.
I always tell people when they come on the show and they go on a tangent, like, people don't call Monster X to listen. They don't listen to Monster X to listen to me and Shane or Julie talk. They call in to listen to our guests. So,
but I think you're asking me if I was open to Bigfoot existing.
Right. No, I mean, you're still.
Sure I am. I had something come down in my backyard. I live on the edge of the forest in Willow Creek, and this is something that a lot of the people who want to get digs in on me are saying all the time, like, he lied to get on Finding Bigfoot. No, I didn't. Right. This is on my blog. It happened in 2008. It's on my blog since 2009. I've said this a million times, whatever it was, the ground vibrated when it came down the hill. I could feel the vibration in the ground through my feet, which were on the ground in my porch, which has a concrete foundation. And it came down the hill and crashed down into the brush. And I was just like, what the heck is that? And I went out in the yard, and I could hear it walking in the brush, and it stopped and stayed there for like 10, 15 minutes. And I was just standing there wondering what to do, and it was so dark and thick, I couldn't go in there after it. I grabbed the flashlight, but it was dying, as I came out the house. So I don't ever claim that was a Bigfoot. I say specifically, I don't know what it was, right? Even though the next day I had my friend over who was going to house it for me, feed the cats anyway. She saw the tracks in the ground. They were not in the soil, but they were in depressions in the plant undergrowth. And they were large. They were bigger than my foot and oval-shaped, So I don't know what made those tracks. What could it have been? But I'm not going to tell you that's a Bigfoot encounter because I didn't see it, and this is what I told Finding Bigfoot, too, the exact same words. But, they edit things out, right? So the part where you say, I didn't see it, I don't know what it was, you have to be skeptical and critical about your own personal experiences. they just cut that out and they put a picture of Matt Moneymaker with his eyes popping out of his head, like Squatch, you know, and then picture CGI of Bigfoot coming down the hill. But like, you know, in my own personal experiences, I've had multiple experiences like this that were weird, but I don't claim that they were Bigfoot. Even the one that I saw, you know, something taller than the brush, in real thick brush down closer to the redwoods. We all heard it moving. It sounded bipedal. The dogs freaked out and ran after it like I've never seen them do before. These are dogs that lived in the mountains and, you know, were used to bears and elk and everything else. And they chased down after this thing, and all I caught was a glimpse, a split second of something brown, you know, moving above some of the brush. And then it just kept walking. And, you know, I can't even claim that's a Bigfoot encounter because I just don't know.
It wasn't clear enough, right?
Right.
See, you're kind of hardwired to. I mean, you got to have a clear visual encounter to be moved, to have the needle move to 100%.
Yes.
You're not. I mean, you know,
I hold myself
hearing a weird
to the
noise.
Standards, right?
Yeah. I mean,
weird noises, they happen in my yard every night, pretty much. There's some animal out there, whether it's a bird, owl, or raven, or raccoon, or bear, or deer, or anything. I mean, I've seen them all kind of cruising around, and they all make weird noises, and sometimes I don't know what they are. You know, like one night I was hearing these bobo-like howls coming from down the road. Like, what in the world is that? And I listened to it at first, but then eventually, you know, I was able to discern that it was a dog that somebody had brought up the hill and lives there now. But it howls just like the bobo, you know. And the pot growers up on the other side of the canyon, they had a party one night and they were up there. They started doing bobo howls off the edge of the creek canyon. And, you know, that kind of spoils the squatching in my backyard concept now, because if I hear a wood knock or if I hear a howl or if I hear somebody back there or something back there, it could be these pot growers, you know, who've conquered and taken over my whole town.
Well, it sounds like you need to put a trail camera right outside your bookstore. That might be a start. Change the project direction.
I might find out who's stealing my. I might see some weird Bigfoot stalkers out there.
Yeah, but Stephen, what do you find interesting or compelling? Maybe not compelling is the wrong word, but maybe interesting as far as anecdotal evidence that's out there now. I mean, is there anything that that you find least interesting or willing to entertain that there's maybe more to it?
Oh, less and less and less so,
right?
I mean, especially since Finding Bigfoot has been on the air, it's promoted the idea of Bigfoot just about everywhere, and I get a lot of people telling me stories in the local community. They all kind of want to have a Bigfoot encounter. It's kind of cool to talk about when you're on the bar drinking a beer. But, when you dig down into the stories, there's quite often signs of exaggeration or assumption that are a little bit too obvious. Like one guy kept telling me he had a knowledge of this spots where the Bigfoot were living, and he was a mountain man, fisherman, hunter, local guy, and he kept telling me these stories over and over again in my store until they get bigger and bigger. Like there's whole family groups, and then pretty soon one story was there was a wildfire and there was a whole herd of Sasquatch that came running down the hill, like the whole mountainside was shaking like a herd of buffalo or something. And he said, this was all Sasquatch fleeing the wildfire that was burning through the trees. I don't know, maybe, but, despite that, when I go to the site, I usually see tracks that look like they're bear tracks. And I suspect bears are responsible for a huge number of these things. And, the owls and the bears could be in the same night. And so you get reports of these things. You have to get so critical and skeptical because, they're being made on Facebook in the same way. And they're being made on blogs, and everybody wants to get on TV or be special and be famous. So there's even more incentive now to just, if not outright lie or hoax, to fool yourself, to become what I call a self-hoaxer, which I used to think Johnson was a self-hoaxer. Now I think we pretty much caught him in outright lies, meaning he is a hoaxer. Like that whole summer before we went to Soha, for instance, he was claiming increased activity, and any day now they were going to be sitting in his lap and he's going to be taking a DNA swab from the juvenile, But then suddenly when we went there and did no harm, we did nothing, We didn't disrupt or hoax or
didn't
try
they
to do
dislike
anything
you? Wasn't it about your personality? They did not. The Bigfoot did not like you, so they moved before you came. It was a very personal thing.
The point is that I guess, like maybe Bigfoot has psychic powers and knew this was coming, but Johnson was saying the very opposite thing all summer long. And then suddenly in January he's saying, I'm moving to a new area, our trolls, and they hijacked my area. We didn't do anything. We didn't throw beer cans in your portal, I mean, come on. Like, it's public lands, and all we did was go there and look and say, well, we don't see anything special. And, we had a team together that was planning a peer review, and we started getting death threats, and people backed out, certain people from Washington and Oregon that I don't want to have anything to do with this. I have to think of my family. I'm not going to get shot.
People are shooting at your store.
Well, that happened earlier. That was that was during a time when the Bigfoot community group had their camp out here, and they were threatening. I got clues. People sent me information from secret group that they have. That like Tom Cantrell was calling me, comparing me to Hitler, and like you can't appease Hitler. And Arla Williams was supposed to come marching into my store with her band, her like cult-like following behind her, just like to confront me. And then the building got shot. So, I'm not going to go outright blame these people for doing it, but it seems highly coincidental. And also, I think the kind of talk that they were spewing and that Johnson also spewed after we found Soha encourages these people that are members of their groups to start thinking along those lines. There were death threats made against us, threats of violence, and they said we should be publicly castrated. And Johnson clicked like on that, and we have screen captures of that of him clicking like on that comment, which is totally against the rules of his group, by the way. But like when a leader like that, like Arla or Tom Cantrell or Matthew Johnson, starts encouraging this kind of behavior, you never know, because they have thousands of people in their group, and there are thousands of others on Facebook who don't have to join their groups to read them because a lot of them are open groups. And so, Kelly Shaw goes out there and lies about us, what we did, so calls us hoaxers. He says we rip off money from donors from the Bluff Creek Project. I mean, we don't do those things. He's lying because he knows if you throw enough mud on the wall, some of it's going to stick. And he wants people to boycott my bookstore. He wants people to not give money to a valid, objective research project, which, I don't get any of that money. I don't steal money from the donations. Jamie handles all of that, and it's all accounted for. And he has published our budget on the blog. So if you've ever heard any of these things, they're lies. And they're coming from people like Kelly Shaw because they're angry we have debunked their so-called evidence and research tactics in the past. And it's like their job they go on a daily basis now with fake identities, trying to harass me and spread lies, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, now on Craigslist, local Humboldt, and the Humboldt page on the Humboldt page on Reddit. They're out there doing the exact same things, using fake identities, of course, to lie about us. I mean, it's technically and really legally libel, but they can all F off as far as I'm concerned. Like, Bluff Creek Project doesn't make any extraordinary claims at all. We do nothing more than put up cameras and observe. And we said, if you want to put donations into the project, you can, and you can feel a part of this. And, if you get involved, we'll take you to the film site. We'll show you where the cameras are. You can donate one of your old trail cameras that you got for Christmas in 1999 or whatever, and we'll put it up in the field. And then you can be proud of the photos that you helped obtain for the interests of objective study of wildlife,
Well,
like
I
Michael
have to say, you did make a wild claim that you got a mark. Oh,
yeah,
wait,
and he likes to say
that was actually a picture of it. Yeah. You had a picture of it. It wasn't
likes to say these things like that we're claiming that we proved that an extinct animal is not extinct. We never did that. Like the one time that Jamie used the word extinct, it was like a joke, to say, it was once thought of as extinct. I mean, on the very blog, we have pictures, and links to all the pages that support the history of this thing and how it was proven to be alive and still living before we started our project.
But it was cool. It was a cool accidental find that the Bluff Creek Project caught a picture of an animal that was, not thought to be in that particular area anymore. And it's kind of like Julie's hair find, and because she used proper procedure and had the hair analyzed, it came back to say, no, it's a bobcat. And that was cool because they were saying that bobcats weren't in the area. But
that's awesome. You find real knowledge by looking, by objectively looking. Like I was going to say, Michael Merchant says, we're out to prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. And that's ridiculous for a guy who says he has a college education in science and biology and can't really prove a negative. Our hypothesis that we're testing is, does Bigfoot exist? And our attitude is, well, we don't know. Let's find out. And along the line, it was the same thing with the film site. All these dozen people, whatever, claiming this, that, and the other. We just said, I don't know where it is. I think probably we could trust Renee the Indian in Daniel Perez's booklet, but we can't just assume that either. So, we look into these things and try to be objective and come to the conclusions that have evidence behind them. And along the way, we learned everything about that area, the whole history of it, the big 1964 flood, the geology and the soil composition and the botany and the zoology, hydrology, what the history of the logging was and the road building in the area.
Right.
We interviewed dozens and dozens of old-timer locals. Some of them are dead now, and we found out the truth. I mean, some of it was what we kind of wanted to hear, like maybe Bigfoot's real, but a lot of it was also, like, well, maybe it's not real. Like the guy who told me he saw them with the wooden feet that they used to make the fake tracks. We had to take all of this with a grain of salt, of course, and not be biased, So we learned valuable things. Like, I can show you what a tree is, that I might not have known before. I can tell you that there are ringtail cats and martins and fishers, which are all considered rare creatures around here. They're living up there in good numbers. And we've watched mountain lion families from their kittens up till they left and became their own independent, territorial individual, you know, with the mother having her two kittens, you know, whatever, all the way till we can identify, like, well, this one has a new territory. We've got them on cameras over there at the lake, you know, and that's cool. That's a success story. We don't mind if we didn't prove Bigfoot exists yet. You know, we'll probably have to write a paper which suggests that the null hypothesis is what's seemingly evident. But even then, we can't just come out and say, well, we did it for 5 years and Bigfoot obviously doesn't exist. I mean, you can't really, that's not how science works, right? Like, well, we can say, well, we didn't find any evidence of it, but the claims persist, the sightings persist, and the possibility is still there. Perhaps a little diminished, you know. But maybe Bigfoot has just moved out of Bluff Creek because there's too many Bigfooters up there looking, you know. Or maybe it's got better habitat somewhere else. And just north of there, there's countless acres of wilderness, like declared official wilderness. All around Bluff Creek is national forest and wilderness areas. So if I were Bigfoot, I would probably be up in the Blue Creek watershed or throughout the Siskiyou Klamath Mountains, the Marble Mountains, Trinity Alps. There's so much good habitat out there, and it's incredibly hard to access. And if you're a smart creature, you could evade humans pretty damn easily. So I think Bigfoot is possible. That's my attitude. I don't mind that we didn't prove it. My sense of self-worth is not invested in getting more hits on YouTube and being known as the guy who found a 24-inch Bigfoot track somewhere. You know, I don't care.
Right. You found a 24-inch Bigfoot track?
No.
You heard it here first on Monster Tree. No, I'm just
there
kidding.
Is some guy like Jim Whitehead or whatever his name is, who's finding 24-inch and 36-inch tracks. And I mean, I don't know. The world's a weird place. Like, there is a lot of unknown in the universe. Like, science is the first to admit that, because I'm not a scientist. I'm a lay person in this regard, but I am more in the philosophy and critical thinking area. That and language, you know, that's my background. But I'm willing to consider the way science works, and the method of science is skepticism. You know, to come up with a plausible, evidence-based hypothesis, and then go and investigate it, find a way to test it, and see if you can prove it wrong. You know, that's what science is doing. It's critical. It's not out to prove something like that it believes. I mean, secretly in the back of their minds, sure. Like every scientist wants to believe what they are finding is true and then prove it and get some recognition for it, because everyone wants to do well in their field, right? But, you know, going out there with your mind all confused and seeing Bigfoot everywhere is counterproductive. Getting mad at critical thinking groups and trolling them for 2 straight years is counterproducctive. Being mad, angry, yelling at people because they don't buy into your beliefs. You're the one doing it?
No. I'm not Jack Frost.
I don't know.
It's bizarre because soon after I started Monster X, I was contacted by a guy that knew where the Bigfoots were, and it was like he was vetting me to see if I was worthy of being taken to meet his Bigfoot family, you know, and I was very polite to the guy initially, and then he became kind of a psychopath, and I used the block feature of Facebook, and I haven't missed him in my life since. But it's interesting as people. I mean, and Shane and I had an experience with another gentleman who was to me, was slightly psychopathic. And I mean, by slightly, I'm being kind. He was a complete psychopath. And but it's interesting is that there are people out there that like you say, their self-worth is tied up into the conclusion that Bigfoot is real and that everything that they find is evidence of Bigfoot, and that they have no obligation to prove the claims that they make to anybody else, and those people I tend to ignore. It's like that's not my perspective or where I'm coming from in this mystery. I mean, it's fascinating to be able to go out and collect and find some weird stuff. You know, I've heard weird stuff, found weird shape impressions in the ground. You know, have had what I think a rock was thrown at me, but you will never hear me say that Bigfoot did any of those things because I did not see Bigfoot do those things. Real Bigfoot research is kind of boring. It takes a lot of time and doesn't yield a lot of results that you can take and show people that, see, I had a Bigfoot experience. And I think some people get impatient with that process, or either just lazy or have no interest in actually having to prove what they say. They just want to say, believe me because I said it. So
it's like God exists, right? You can't prove God exists, but just claim that God exists. You know, faith in that, and that's a whole other thing. And, you know, a lot of people who are religious will get angry if you challenge their conception of reality or God. But I mean, really, honestly, all that science can say is we don't see any evidence for that. I mean, maybe it's true. I don't know. Maybe we're just tiny little microbial entities on some petri dish, you know, and that's our whole universe. I don't know. But, like, it's counterproductive for me to try to understand reality using faith. You know, faith and belief are for people in their private lives or among their spiritual communities where they should seek comfort and meaning in their lives to hopefully have a better life and be better people. Like, it doesn't have that much application to things like science, you know. Arguing from the basis of religion that evolution isn't real is absurd, you know. All the evidence shows that evolution is real, so why contradict it? And, you know, scientists, on the other hand, you know, we can't, you could say this to the Bigfoot skeptics, too, the real hardcore ones who are really not skeptical inquiry people, they're deniers, you know. To those people, you could say, well, you don't know, and just be casual about it. You don't need to defend yourself like your life has just been threatened. Like, so what if people don't believe that God or Sasquatch exist? You know, we live hopefully in a free democratic republic, whatever, where people should be able to have their own opinions about things and practice their free speech on Facebook groups without being harassed and called a troll every day, and have people lie about you and stuff, or, you know, worse.
Right. Well, here's what I wanted to say to people. When somebody doesn't have an argument for somebody, you know, they don't have an actual valid argument, you're a troll. I mean, that's one of the functions of Facebook. People do that crap because they don't have a valid argument. So their defense, the way to win the argument is to call you a troll.
Right. Yeah, well, like, trolling is a very specific thing. You know, like in old internet groups and forums, a troll was somebody who came in there just to cause disruption and chaos and would harass and maybe stalk somebody and just mess with people because they get pleasure out of that. you know. But that's not what we're doing in the coalition group. We're not trolling anybody, you know.
You're in your own group.
It's a closed
you're in your
group, and we have a private discussion.
Right.
But
you may
people, they
disagree with the
imagine
content
that we're...
What are
they
there
imagine
like
that
3,100 members?
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's 3,100 members or something in the coalition, I believe. Like that, you know, I can't imagine that all 3,100 people agree on everything 100% of the time. So there's
no, you don't.
There's lively discussion sometimes within the group.
We try to have that. We want to be confrontational, like, and debate things, you know, because if there's no sense in just sitting around and saying, we're going to ban all the people who propose something different, then there'll be nothing to talk about, you know. But we do require logical approaches, and if somebody makes an irrational statement, we'll challenge them on that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who, because of their belief systems, they're unable to understand the concepts of logic and proper thinking. And we, you know, that's really our mission is to try, I know it's a lost cause, but try to teach how to think to people. And, you know, I'm not saying this because I think I'm smarter than anybody. I'm saying this because I think it's the right way to live, to think and look at reality and live in the real world. Because, you know, there's real life problems arguing about whether Bigfoot can cloak, and look at the fact that, like, gorillas, orangutans, and other primates are going extinct in the wild, you know, or are close to it. These are things that matter. I mean, these people will deny the success of Bluff Creek Project finding that marten up there on multiple photographs, multiple areas, just because they're angry at us over the Bigfoot controversies. When this animal has only 100 estimated individuals left in the wild. I mean, this is a threatened, endangered subspecies, and they're out there trying to discredit this, not on the basis of science, but on the basis of personal jealousy. You know, meanwhile, this animal could go extinct because of neglect, because the Fish and Wildlife Service made a political decision not to list it on the endangered species list because they don't want to manage martens as diverse. I think there's like 12 subspecies of marten in America. These are regional subspecies that are distinct and have to do with like glacial separation of these populations. So genetically they're different. You know, there's no sense in denying it over Bigfoot. You know, we should all be happy when anyone succeeds in finding real knowledge, and that's what I'm always hoping. You know, like the Olympic Project does great work, and you know, Derek put up a.
You guys did not have any intention of proving that the marten exists. I mean, it was an offshoot. It was an accidental benefit of you guys doing Bigfoot research.
Yes.
So I mean it.
Yeah.
So that in itself makes the Bluff Creek Project to me a valuable contribution to science.
Well, you know, also, I'm not making this claim. It was made by objective outside groups that we presented the photos to, and who know about regional separation of the subspecies. And I'm not trying to prove that I can beat Kelly Shaw up, or that I could win an arm wrestling match with Michael Merchant. You know, I don't care. My ego's not in that. You know, I'm invested in the truth. You know, they're trying to defend something based on their personalities, and I don't give a damn about that. You know, I mean, the truth is that the marten is there, so we've adapted our study, we've adapted our camera placement to find more photos of them. We're trying to get the better videos and more knowledge about this animal. You know, we're still looking for Bigfoot. Like, it's there. But this isn't me. This isn't my ego saying this. You know, I'm just part of this. You know, Jamie and Rowdy and Robert Leiterman, these are guys doing this work, you know. And like Ian Carton, the one that I started the group with way back in 2009. we've always just been interested in the truth. You know, a lot of people hate us because we showed that Peter Byrne was wrong, N.K. Davis was wrong, Christopher Murphy was wrong, Daniel Perez was even wrong, couldn't find it, even though it was in his book. The film site was marked in his book. But we found it, and there's still people who deny that we found the film site location, even though we have mathematical proofs on my blog that show that this is the place, and you can't deny it. It's within inches. The margin of error is like 3%, and this is done by comparing rough aerial photograph from the hillside with our survey map. You know, so there's going to be a small margin of error, but that's the film site, and you can see every frame of the way through where the camera was and where the subject of the film was. So, you know, we've put this in the hands of people like Bill Munns who have more technical abilities, and you know, we're going to get a site surveyor up here soon. Hopefully, we'll get more precise measurements and find out perhaps once and for all what lens was used on that camera, and how tall and how wide and how massive that creature or man in a suit was. You know, but I mean, even to this day, people get mad because, like, I won't say the film is a hoax, or they'll get mad that I won't say it's real. You know, well, you know, we're trying to find out. You know, and the basis for that is not being a puffed up ego and bragging and getting mad at people on Facebook. It's facts and evidence, and that's what we want. All of us should want that, I think.
Well, all of us on this broadcast would like that. I'm pretty sure that not everybody on Facebook is interested in any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So we should divide
I
the
think,
two things up.
Stephen, I think some of the problem, though, with why you have haters is they're jealous of the fact that you guys are doing this Bluff Creek Project, and it's scientific, and you've had the Martin pictures, and I mean, didn't somebody take a picture of already photographed Martin and said, "Here, I took this picture of one before them," and lo and behold, it was a picture copyright off the internet?
Oh yeah, that was Kelly Shaw. He wanted to disparage Bluff Creek Project, so he said it was just a common martin, pine martin. And he claimed that he'd gotten photographs of it all over the place, including when he came out here and did his little vacation along the highway in the Redwoods and along the Bigfoot Scenic Byway. He put up photos that he said he had taken of this martin.
But they weren't.
And it turned out that
went and found those
photo.
They were. Go ahead.
We busted him, completely busted him in a hoax. It is outright lying, and wherever else he posted this stuff, I can't remember now, but it was posted on our Facebook page, on the Bluff Creek Project page. He came in there and claimed, this is a photo of a Humboldt martin that I took when I was in Humboldt County, and we dropped it into Google Images, and it popped up within a day. We busted him as a hoaxer. It popped up an image taken by a professional photographer, and other people who know things, like Richard Allen is an enthusiast for the weasel family, the mustelids, however you pronounce that. He has ferrets, and he said that's a weasel. That's a common weasel. And Randy Filipovic busted him on his blog, and it all came out of the coalition group. This is what we do. If Kelly Shaw wants to produce real good evidence, we'll praise him for it. But so far he hasn't. And hoaxing photographs to try to harm another Bigfoot research project is just plain evil. That's a lie. We caught him in a lie, and his response to it was to troll me and my group for 2 years. Trying to get people not to come to my bookstore. It's hard not to sell books in this world as it is today, but also to try to get people to stop from sending money or a camera for an objective wildlife survey. I mean, it's lame. We're not begging for money. We could pay for this ourselves, but the idea is that science ideally, and in fact, science is funded by public funds. All scientists are worried about getting grants, and independent research projects are often funded by private donations, and that's all we're doing. We're trying to have like an example for people, We are going to set up this project as a crowd-funded, publicly open and transparent research project that's trying to show reality. And we're not going to bias it to get YouTube hits. These blob squatches can get 3,000, 3 million hits. They get on Coast to Coast AM or something with it. That's what Bigfoot Evidence Blog and all these others are trying to do, is just have some viral crap that gets like a million hits. And then you can put like 5 ads in your YouTube video.
Right. The hits are a motivation to get those hits on YouTube.
For some people that is, for some people that is a motivation, is that they are putting whatever out there that will garner attention on a particular social media to get advertising dollars or whatever. I mean, I was recently a participant in the Operation Sea Monkey, and I still say that was unfortunately named, but and we actually raised money to go and do a particular project, and there was people that had stuff to say about that, and I don't honestly I didn't really care. If you don't believe in what an organization is doing, it's the same with the Bluff Creek Project or the Olympic Project or the Tillamook Forest Group or the Operation Sea Monkey. If you don't believe, don't give your money and shut up about it. I mean, if there's not, if there is a real reason to be concerned about where the money's going, then it will come to light at some point. But you guys have a camera project. I've seen it. I mean, I know that I went with you where you guys actually go down and collect the cards and change out the cards for the cameras. I mean, there's real work to what you're doing. It isn't sitting in an armchair, on Facebook. There's real boots on the ground kind of work. And
sure. But even then, we're not trying to be macho about it. Brag about how cool we look wearing camouflage, or that we can hunt better than any of these other guys. I mean, I don't care about that. My personal investment is in my ideas, and I'm going to think about these things, and I'm going to say what I think, and that is what pisses people off, is that I don't kiss their beat butts, and try to be nice and sweet and kumbaya about it. Even then, I might attack something like the Sierra Sounds. I think that they're not real. But, that doesn't mean I'm saying Ron Moorhead is a hoaxer or he's a bad guy or anything. I'm saying
he's a really nice guy. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've met him and I've seen his presentations, but I still have to remain critical about his recordings. I don't know if maybe he was tricked in the field. I don't know these things. And in any case, if these things can't stand up to the scrutiny of a group on Facebook like the Coalition Group, then they're certainly not going to pass the muster of real science. Real scientists are going to tear that stuff apart.
Right.
That's what scientists do to each other. I mean, not personally so often, but they'll tear each other's stuff to shreds if they can, because that's, what you can't tear apart and destroy with analysis is what's real. That's how you find scientific truth. That's how you find truth in other areas, like in terms of logic or thinking. A poorly thought through, poorly expressed idea cannot hold water. Just like any other craft in life, if you're building like a pot using pottery, you don't want it to fall apart or have holes in it. And it's the same basic idea. If you want to construct a logical argument, it has to be sound. It has to have all the parts there. It can't violate the laws of language and logic. It has to be put together with knowledge and learning and things that have gone before. Proposing things that are magical. I mean, it's not going to get you anywhere. Even if you want to prove magic stuff.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Even if you want to prove magic stuff, you've got to find a way to actually do that.
Document
you can't just read like a quantum physics book and say, well, Bigfoot's obviously using quantum physics. No. What you need is an understanding of how quantum functions on this particle level of reality, and then you need to find out how could it apply on our level of experience where we are living. Because there's a whole vast realm of reality that we can't see or even conceive of, separate from these instruments that we use to measure these particles. So we should try to learn as best we can from real science and not go off the deep end saying, well, this proves every paranormal idea in the book. I'll just say quantum physics like Deepak Chopra does, or like Ron Moorhead does, I'm not closed-minded about quantum physics. I want to know what the real quantum physics is. I don't want an escape hatch to get out of reality. I want to find out what reality is.
Right. So, right? Stephen, if you were to express an opinion about if Bigfoot is real, what do you believe it to be a flesh and blood biological entity?
Yeah. Well, it would have to be because everything on Earth is a part of evolution. It has all of life is one expression of life here on Earth. It's all related. And so Bigfoot, if it's real, would fit somewhere on the evolutionary tree. I think all the evidence points towards it being some kind of a, primate, right? So, okay, let's get rid of these ideas like the specialness of humans, for one. Like, we are an exceptional species created by a divine entity or whatever. Just look at it as it is. We are very, very close to chimpanzees in the family tree of these animals. And some people even consider us the third chimpanzee. Well, chimps are closer to us than they are to gorillas. So we're apes. We're an ape, human, Homo sapiens. And there are various forms of the Homo lineage that we have discovered, including the Denisovans recently and the Homo floresiensis that are very close to us, that lived within recent times. Yeah, and we mated with Neanderthals and stuff, Neanderthals were a form of human, just like us. They would have looked different a little, but, so Bigfoot, considering its bipedal foot structure and all these things that Meldrum talks about, it's harder to conceive of it as some distant ape that had parallel evolution. It's a lot easier to consider it as closer to the Homo sapiens line than anything else. But I wouldn't go so far as David Paulides or M.K. Davis, who say it's human, and it's a modern form of human, a Native American tribe living in the wild, with culture and technology and fire and shelters and all these things that somehow we've never been able to find. Obviously it's an ape. It lives like an ape. We are apes. The question is more, if it's real, how close are we to it? And considering what we know about our own evolutionary line, I'd say it has to have come from before, Heidelbergensis. It would have to be a robust form of Erectus or something, an earlier form of, these other relatives that we have that somehow didn't evolve in the same direction and somehow survived without leaving a noticeable fossil record. That's a big problem, And the closest thing that we have in the fossil record is Gigantopithecus. We don't even know much about that, really, except that it ate bamboo and fruit and stuff. Maybe it was related to the orangutan, but we don't even really have concrete proof of that. It could have been closer to us, for all we know, or looked more like Bigfoot. Or there could have been any number of relatives of these gigantotype creatures that we just haven't found. I mean, this species lived for many thousands of years. We only have teeth and a few fragments of jawbones to prove that. So how likely is it that there have been other forms that have slipped through and haven't been found in the fossil record yet? This is an area where I think agnosticism is called for, because we don't have definitive proof either way. And it's silly to have these arguments like people do. Bigfoot's a person. It's a forest person. We
can't even prove they exist. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And
it's like we're talking about a unicorn and what kind of, what is it? I mean, in exaggerated terms, it's like, yeah, what is Bigfoot? Well, we got to prove is Bigfoot. Stephen, we're running up against the clock. 2 hours flew by. I would really love to have you back on the show, because you
absolutely.
I really enjoy your pragmatic approach to the subject, and I've met you in person. It's always funny to me to meet people that you know on the internet versus meeting them in person, because there's usually they're more I like the human element, and I personally think that you're a cool dude, and appreciate what you guys are doing with the Bluff Creek Project, and
absolutely.
Hang in there and bringing sanity to the insane world of Bigfooting. So I do want to thank my co-host Shane Corson, who was relatively quiet tonight, and my other good friend Julie Rench for joining us tonight, and Stephen Streufert of Bigfoot Books. Go buy books at Stephen's bookstore, damn it. He has 150 Bigfoot books, and I'm going to go buy one this week, at least one. I know that I'll find one I don't have. So thanks, everybody.
You can just contact me on the internet if you want, because they're not all listed for sale on book-selling sites. But I appreciate you having me on, and it'd be great to come back. Maybe with my research partners. I know that I always get all this attention because I'm this dude sitting right in Mecca, but the real work is being done. I'm like more like the guy who's talking all the time, or the historian of the thing. But you should see Robert Leiterman going up and down hills with these cameras and stuff.
You like James Millian? Yeah, that's
credit. And Jamie, of course, the current camera project is his thing more than anybody's. And Rowdy, of course, is a great outdoorsman. We all have a thing that we do, including Ian Carton, my sort of more historical partner who started this thing, even though he now lives in West Virginia or Virginia, one of those two. He's still involved, but just too far away to really be part of it. We'd be happy to be on like that if it's possible.
No, it'd be great.
All right.
So thanks, everybody, for listening to Monster X Radio. We will be back next Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Come on. Julie's
Thomas Steenberg.
Secret Love, Thomas Steenberg, and my buddy from the Operation Sea Monkey, Thomas Steenberg, will be with us next weekend. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is Monster X Radio. We're out.
Have a great week.
If you take Uber, it doesn't. It's easy. Just install the Uber app. Enter your destination, confirm your location, and within minutes, a car will pick you up. Whether you're catching the red eye or taking off at the crack of dawn, you can request a ride 24/7. So avoid the hassle. Install the Uber app now and take your first ride today. Uber, the better way to get there.